Hello, students. Welcome back. I hope you're really enjoying the chapters that we've studied so far. I realize there's a lot of new stuff, a lot of diverse things that you're studying. And today, students, we're going to do history. We're starting with the chapter called the Stone Age and the earliest societies. You would be amazed to know what we're studying today happened. We're studying the period of Earth, like right from the very beginnings, the time period for which we have history, right? We have evidence. This is the period between 500,000 years before the Christ was born, 500,000 BC, and to somewhere between around 4, 4,000 BC, right? So between 500,000 BC and 4,000 BC, this vast time period we'll be covering today, right? What happened? What kind of people were there? What kind of lives did they have? Yes. So, and this chapter, what's even more amazing, students, for me personally, is the fact that we have evidence, right? And India, in fact, in India itself, there are a lot of sites from which we have evidence of this prehistoric life, right? So, we are today going to be studying about the Stone Age and the earliest societies, right? So, just a small overview of what we will be studying. So we will understand the lives of these people, then what kind of sources do we have, then the time division, right? So this period is vast, like 500,000 to 4,000 is a vast time period, students, right? What, 490,000 years, 96,000 years. That is huge, right? So again, so yes, we will be studying the time, the division, the division that we have. We will be studying the rock paintings and the environmental changes. Right? Okay. So now, bache, we will begin by discussing the lives that these people had. Right? So you have to understand a couple of things that these people did not have cities, right? They were hunter gatherers, right? And humans, students, appeared for the first time on Earth around 1.5 million years ago. They would gather foods, they would hunt, right? They were nomads. They did not have a house. They did not have something that they called home, right? They were living by the day, right? So they lived a very primitive life. They lived out in the jungles with nature, right? So again, it says they would hunt animals, gather fruits, other plant produce, and they did not live at one place, right? They would move from one place to another in search of water, in search of to save their lives from other wild animals, right? And they would mostly go in small groups, right? So this is a short of their life. Now let's move on to bache. How do we know about these people? How do we know about the lives that they led, right? You would be amazed that we know about them through stones, through tools, and through weapons. Right? So stones, bache, were used to hunt animals. So how would they hunt animals? They would need a stone to cut through the flesh, right? To or they would use it as a arrow. They would stick a sharp stone to a stick. Maybe they would tie a stick around a sharp stone, and they would hunt the animals, right? Next is to remove skin of animals to cut meat, right? To eat and to cut trees and to clear forests. Okay. So that's how we know about them. And this is the importance of stones for these people. Okay. So stones were very important to them. This was the biggest piece of like technology what we have today. Like we cannot survive without a Wi-Fi connection, maybe, right? So this that was stones to them. It was very important, right? So people depended upon stones for survival. Therefore, bache, this period between 500,000 BC to 4,000 BC is known as the Stone Age. Why is it known as the Stone Age? Because people depended upon stones for survival, right? They would put a lot of times in sharpening the stones, in making them, right? So that is why this period is known as the Stone Age. Now, bache, Stone Age is divided into three periods: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. Right? Paleolithic is the period between 500,000 BC to 10,000 BC. Okay? So before I move ahead, bache, Paleo means old, right? Lithic means stone. Paleo means old. Meso means middle, and Neo means new, right? So once again, Paleo bache means old, Meso means middle, and Neo means new. And Lithic is stone. So old stone, middle stone, and new stone age. So old stone age, middle stone age, and new stone age. Mesolithic was between 10,000 BC to 8,000 BC, and Neolithic is from 8,000 BC to 4,000 BC. The next couple of slides, I will be covering what each and every period covered, right? What was the stark features that divides these particular periods. For now, three important things. Why the Stone Age? Because people depended upon stones for survival, and this Stone Age is divided further into three: Paleo, Meso, and Neo. Paleo, Old Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, and New Stone Age. Then what we have is bache, Paleolithic Age is again divided into three parts, right? So Paleolithic Age is divided into three parts on the basis of changes in climate and stone tools. Okay? So this period between 500,000 BC to 10,000 BC is first divided into Lower Paleolithic Age, Middle Paleolithic Age, and Upper Paleolithic Age. Okay? So lower, middle, and upper. Now lower Paleolithic Age bache is also known as early Stone Age. Right? So this is the formative age, like the very beginning. Right? This is the time wherein the earth was covered in ice, and it is also known as the cold period or the Pleistocene period. So, and different kinds of tools were used, like the hand axe to chop trees and hunt, which is known as choppers, because they were used mostly to chop and to hunt. Right? These tools were a lot heavier. Okay. So these are so. What is the most shocking feature about this is the fact that this period was the earth was mostly covered in ice. It was very cold, right? It is the cold period, and it is also known as the Pleistocene period. Okay. Then what we have is climate started changing a bit, right? And Paleolithic period in India, it is found in Punjab as well as in banks of River Narmada in Madhya Pradesh. Okay. Now, Middle Paleolithic Age. Middle Paleolithic Age is also known as the Middle Old Stone Age. Paleo is Old Stone Age, and this is the middle phase of this Old Stone Age period. So now, students, the main tools were different types of borers and scrapers, which were made of stone, right? Found in banks of Narmada River in Madhya Pradesh and Sloan Valley in Punjab. Right, students? So you have to understand main tools here were different types of borers and scrapers, which were made of stone. Right. Next, what we have is Upper Paleolithic Age, known as the Upper Old, also known as the Upper Old Stone Age, and this is the final phase of Ice Age. And this period ended with the onset of agriculture. So when did agriculture begin? With the end of Upper Paleolithic Age. Right? So this is the period wherein we have climate change. From cold, it became warm on Earth. And blades and burins were used as tools. Okay, so a small recap: Paleolithic age is divided into three: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, and Upper Paleolithic. It is lower is the early Old Stone Age. It is the very formative age. very cold period, right? And we would use hand axe to chop trees and hunt, which are also known as choppers. Right. Then you have the middle Paleolithic age, and the main tools were borers and scrapers made from stone. And again, you have these sites in Narmada in Madhya Pradesh and Sloan Valley in Punjab. Then you have come to the Upper Paleolithic Age, which is known as the Upper Old Stone Age, and this marks the beginning of agriculture as well as we see climate change from cold to warm, right? And a variety of tools are used, which includes blades and burins, right? Next, what we have is students fire. Another very important feature of this period is fire, bache. Now, why important? Students, this is very important because humans learned to light the fire. Now, previously, they had seen fire, undoubtedly. They knew that there was something dangerous about fire, but those were natural fires, right? You have natural fires as well as artificial fires, but they did not know how to light fire on their own. So this is something that's very new about this period. So the question comes that how did they discover how to light a fire? Right. So the answer is that it is assumed that they might have been rubbing stones together, right, which produce sparks, and it might have lit up the dry leaves nearby. That is how they might have discovered how to build fire. Right. Now, the fact is that through trial and experiences, they learned that, oh, they keep the wild animals away, and this fire also helps in keeping us warm. And this period is very cold, right? This Paleolithic period was a period wherein the earth was the climate was really cold. So that is how it impacted. And they also, with experience, they learned that the meat that they would eat, it tasted better when it was heated, right? So that is how they started cooking, right? Meat tasted better when it came from the fire. It was more chewy. So this is how discovery of fire was came somewhere around in the Paleolithic period. Yes. And it was a huge invention for them. Okay. So then we come to the next is Mesolithic Age. Now, Mesolithic Age, students, is between 10,000 BC and 8,000 BC. Now, the climate changed from to very warm and dry from cold climate. And tools, the kind of tools that are used were small, they were sharp, they were pointed stone tools known as microliths. And in India, we found them in Chota Nagpur, in Jharkhand, and banks of river Ganga. So you see these stone tools, students, these are sharp, right? And trust me, if you would touch them, you can actually cut your finger too. Right? So they were very small, they were sharp. Now, what would they do with these stones? You might be wondering, right? So it would come handy in cutting the flesh, right? It would come handy in chopping trees, fetching wood for themselves, to hunt food. Okay, so this is Mesolithic period. The most starking feature of this period is there was climate change to warm and dry from cold climate, and tools are small, sharp, and pointed, which are also known as microliths. Okay, now from between 8,000 to 4,000 BC is the Neolithic Age, the new Stone Age, right? Now, these tools were advanced and sharper in comparison to the previous ages of the Paleolithic and the Mesolithic. And these stone students would sparkle, right? Why? Because they were so highly polished, right? And the kind of tools that they used were axes, sickles, arrows, spear, and arrowheads. Okay, so they would use these tools to survive and sustain. Next is making of stone tools. Now, students, we have identified the fact that stone tools are very important, right? Stone is the essence, is something that their life depended on. So, was every stone beneficial to them? Yes, but they made it suit to their needs, right? They changed it, they altered it to suit to their requirements. Okay. So they made stone tools, right? So, and this was very important as well, right? So, flakes and cores. This is where this comes in, right? Two kinds of stones were mostly used: flakes and cores. Cores is the bigger stone, and flakes is the chipped off stone that chipped from the core. Okay. So, to explain this in detail, stones were made by taking a piece of stone and knocking off flakes, a process known as knapping. When the flakes were used, the tools produced are referred to as flake tools. Flake tools is something when you knock off a bigger stone, when you knock once again, let me explain it through annotation, right? Okay. Now, this, for example, is my stone, right? And what I would do is, one second, this is my core stone, right, students? Now, what I would do is that I would use another stone and hit on this. So when I would hit on this, a part would fall off, right? So for example, my this stone is a result of it came from this bigger stone. So this is a flake. Please pardon my handwriting, students, right? So this bache is a flake, while this is my core stone, right, students? So when the core itself was used, it is referred to as the core tool. When flakes were used, it is known as a flake tool. Now, there were two techniques. Okay, students. So, there are two techniques which were used to make tools, stone tools. One is pressure flaking method. Now, this, as I explained, what is happening is, one second, I will use annotation to explain this. Right. So now, students, what is happening here is that there is a stone. It is a flake. This is a flake. Right. Now, what are they doing here is that this is another stone. Now, are, now this man is holding this other stone, right? And he would hammer it right on the edges of the flake, so that this sharpens out like this, right? So, he's sharpening out the edges of a flake. This is known as pressure flaking technique, right, students? The next technique that we have is stone on stone. Now, this is very simple and very easy to understand. The person would hold the stone in one hand and use the other stone to, and he would hammer the stone with another stone, right? Use another stone as a hammer. One second. Let me annotate and explain. Right. So, this is one stone, one big stone, and the person would hold it in his or her hand. They would take another stone. Now, this is the core stone. Then they would take a hammer stone in their hands and they would hammer it on the core stone. What would happen with this is, students, that these parts would automatically chip off. Right? And what they would get in the end is something that was very sharp and suited to their requirements. Okay. So, for example, one second, I have Let me show you. Yeah, you see these stones. These stones are very sharp stones, very sharp. You can easily cut your finger, right? They prepared these stones by rubbing them, by using techniques like stone on stone and pressure flaking. Okay. There's another picture I've added of the Stone Age that has. All right. One second. I will show it to you later in class maybe, right? And show you the different kind of stones that we found. Next, what we have is students. We have rock paintings. Okay. So now they a lot of times would live in caves. Okay. And they decorated the cave walls with drawings. Right now, what would they draw? They would draw a lot of things like wild horses, bears, bison, stags, right? Often men hunting, dancing, preparing food, etc. Okay. So in India, you found a lot of cave paintings from this particular period, from the Paleolithic period, the Mesolithic period, right? The Neolithic period in Madhya Pradesh, Southern Uttar Pradesh, and we find them in variety of color: red, green, white, ochre, charcoal. Okay, so they would use a lot of mineral stones to prepare this, right? Um, Lastly, what we come to is now students during 12,000 years ago, right? The climate changed. How did these periods change? How did humans advance from that particular age? Is that climate change, right? We became warm from a very cold climate. We have grasslands. Ab kya hota hai now, students? What happens is that when you have what do you call these grasslands, right? So when you have a warmer climate, you have more grasslands, right? So when grasslands emerge, a number of animals that survive on grasses also emerge, right? We have studied that environment and your geography are very much correlated, right? So in a warmer climate, you do have a lot of grasslands, right? So with grasslands, the animals that survive in a grassland kind of ecosystem also increased. Yes. So with this, what we have is, and now students, what would happen is that hunters would follow these animals, right? They learned their habits, they bred them, they fed them. They started understanding how these animals operated. They started understanding that how would the animal go from, what was the what season did they bred, what season, what would they eat, right? What would they prey? And that's how they started rearing animals for themselves as well. Okay. Then what happened was that grain bearing grasses, right, they grew naturally and they would eat them. But after, with long period of time, with experience, right, they started analyzing and they started understanding and learning the cycle of grains, right? How long would it take for them and the different ways we can grow them. This gave an impetus to agriculture. They started growing plants. Plants did not grow naturally. Humans started initiating growing plants. And this happened not over a year or a decade, right? It took thousands of years for people to understand why what is happening, for them to make um, reference and to understand and to come up with their own understanding, right? So on this end, we complete this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got a different, some new knowledge, and yes, you learned something new. Come up to the Zoom session with as many doubts as you can. See you soon. Bye, students.